when they start killing thousands of people, and now you're telling me about hanging, we'll see how that works out for them. It's not going to work out good.
President Trump says the U.S. will take, quote, very strong action, end quote, if Iran starts hanging protesters. The reported death toll from the nationwide protests in the Islamic Republic has surpassed several thousand. We don't have a definite number yet. Eyewitness reports indicate government forces have begun opening fire, at times seemingly indiscriminately, on unarmed protesters. Earlier, President Trump told Iranian protesters help is on the way, while also saying he's cutting off the prospect of talks with officials. Senior national correspondent Rich Edson is at the White House tonight with the latest. Good evening, Rich.
Hi, good evening, Brett. Leaders around the world, especially those in Tehran, are wondering how President Trump is going to respond to those reports of thousands of protesters dead in Iran. He'll have options as senior officials discuss strategy at the White House today. Iranians are scouring morgues to identify their loved ones. Estimates suggest their government has killed thousands of citizens. President Trump is warning that Iran is starting to cross U.S. red lines on protester deaths.
One death is too much, but I hear much lower numbers, and then I hear much higher numbers. But I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price.
As anti-regime protests spread, the Iranian government is blocking the internet. And there are reports security services have shoot-to-kill orders. Iran's government is pushing to restart nuclear negotiations in an effort to avoid potential U.S. strikes. Iran says its foreign minister reached out to White House envoy Steve Witkoff over the weekend. President Trump is publicly shutting down any personal diplomacy. He posted, quote, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. As for what that help will be,
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
the White House says senior officials, including the Secretaries of State and War and the CIA director, discussed options for the president this morning at a regularly scheduled national security meeting. A source familiar says the vice president led a separate later meeting this afternoon with the national security team. A spokesman for the vice president is denying a report that Vance is urging the president to try diplomacy before strikes against Iran. Iran's supreme leader has posted insults towards President Trump. Germany's chancellor predicts Iran will soon have a new government.
If a regime can only maintain its power through violence, then it is effectively finished. I assume that we are now seeing the last days and weeks of this regime.
And now the State Department is urging American citizens to leave Iran if it is safe to do so, and by land through Armenia or Turkey.
President Trump says U.S. growth, productivity, and investment are all booming, adding that inflation has been defeated, in his words. The president in Detroit today touting his economic message after visiting an auto plant as affordability becomes the hot topic ahead of the midterms. White House correspondent Aisha Hasni was traveling with the president in Detroit.
That jerk will be gone soon.
President Trump slamming Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell for not cutting rates again as he spoke to the Detroit Economic Club today.
They kill every rally, no matter who's president. You have a good quarter, and they want to kill it because they're so petrified of inflation.
A new CPI report out today reveals consumer prices rose 0.3% from November to December, but the inflation rate stayed steady at 2.7% year over year. While that's still above the Fed's 2% target, it shows overall inflation isn't spiking. In nearby Dearborn, which swung red for Trump in 2024, people are still feeling the pain at the grocery store.
Oh, it's high. Yeah, it's very.
I often wonder how young families pay their bills.
Do you feel like life has gotten better?
Somewhat. It appears to be getting a little bit better, but we've got a long way to go.
The White House says prices are coming down on some things, pointing to lower gas prices. The national average at $2.82, according to AAA, with gas below $3 per gallon in 42 states. And before his speech, Trump touted new auto jobs and increased auto production as he toured a Ford factory in Dearborn, warning that if the Supreme Court rules against him on his tariff policies, it would be almost impossible for our country to pay.
An anti-tariff person is a pro-Chinese person.
And Brett, tonight the White House is responding to reports that the president made a vulgar gesture at a Ford plant worker today while he was touring that facility. The White House communications director, Stephen Chung, writes this: a lunatic was wildly screaming expletives in a complete fit of rage, and the president gave an appropriate and unambiguous response. That's from the White House tonight. Brett.
It was not, we're number one. Aisha, thank you. U.S. Supreme Court justices are weighing arguments in two cases that could determine whether states can ban transgender athletes from competing on girls' and women's school sports teams. The battle could have far-reaching implications on transgender policies all across the country. Correspondent David Spahn has the latest from the Supreme Court.
Save women's sports!
An early morning peaceful protest outside the U.S. Supreme Court. Inside, the 9 justices debated whether keeping transgender athletes off female school sports teams represents sex discrimination. At issue, challenges to state laws defining biological sex based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth.
For the individual girl who does not make the team, or doesn't get on the stand for the medal, or doesn't make all league, there's a harm there. And I think we can't sweep that aside.
There's no question here that a male who identifies as a female, but it's a male, is being excluded from a female sport. By its nature, that's a sex classification.
That would mean it would be harder for a state to justify its ban on transgender females from participating in school sports.
The law expressly aims to ensure that transgender women can't play on women's sports teams.
It turns on sex. The legislature did not want to exclude transgender people from sports. It wanted to keep women's sports women only and exclude males from women's sport.
29 states have laws or policies restricting girls' sports to biological females. An eventual ruling would impact those states and potentially non-sports issues like bathroom policies and government-issued IDs. The West Virginia case surrounds high school student Becky Pepper Jackson, who wants to compete on the girls' track team. Jackson takes puberty-delaying medication and estrogen and claims, therefore, not to have a competitive advantage over biological females. But the states defending their laws say it is about fairness, student safety, and an equal playing field for female athletes.
An independent council in South Korea is demanding the death sentence for former President Yoon Suk-yeol over rebellion charges in connection with his short-lived imposition of martial law in December of 2024. Yoon was removed from office last April and is in jail while facing 8 trials over various criminal charges related to his enforcing of martial law. Russia launches another major drone and missile bombardment of Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say the attacks targeted the country's power grid. President Volodymyr Zelensky says one strike in the Kharkiv region killed 4 people. Several 100,000 households were without power in the Kyiv region. And this is a live look at Rome. One of the big stories there tonight, a well-preserved ancient Roman home is opening to the public for the first time. The House of the Griffins and its newly restored paintings can now be toured virtually via live stream. The home was first discovered during the excavations, in the early 20th century and is believed to be between 2,000 and 2,500 years old.
Now we're learning at least 4 federal prosecutors operating out of Minneapolis have resigned out of concerns over the federal investigation. ABC's Faith Abube leads us off from Minneapolis.
Tonight, violent ICE operations escalating in the Twin Cities despite a lawsuit demanding they stop. Agents ripping a woman out of this vehicle. She tells them she's disabled. Agents also clashing with protesters and leading a man in shorts and a t-shirt away from a house. It's been nearly a week since ICE agent Jonathan Ross shot and killed Renee Good. The Department of Justice has called the killing justified and is not cooperating with state or local agencies on their investigation. And tonight, ABC News has learned that at least 4 federal prosecutors working out of Minnesota have resigned over concerns the department is focusing on investigating Renee Good, who the administration has called a domestic terrorist. On Monday, Minnesota and the Twin Cities filed lawsuits alleging agents were told to, quote, pushed the envelope of immigration enforcement tactics. President Trump responding to that lawsuit on Truth Social, writing, quote, Minnesota Democrats love the unrest that the anarchists and professional agitators are causing. End quote. Fear not, great people of Minnesota. The day of reckoning and retribution is coming. The ICE agents have been here since December. Video obtained by Bring Me the News shows agents arresting 2 workers at a Minnesota Target last week. A state lawmaker says they were U.S. citizens. Agents were first deployed to go after Minnesota's undocumented Somali immigrant population. President Trump has called Somalis garbage. And today, the Department of Homeland Security announcing they're revoking the temporary protected status for thousands of Somali refugees, ordering them to leave the country by March 17th. Secretary Noem declaring that conditions in Somalia have improved and allowing Somali nationals to remain temporarily in the United States is contrary to our national interests. Late today, President Trump went even further.
We're also going to revoke the citizenship of any naturalized immigrant from Somalia or anywhere else who is convicted of defrauding our citizens.